So I just finished Metroid Fusion. So Metroid Fusion is a pretty divisive game in the Metroid fan community, I guess you could say. A lot of people really like it, and a lot of people really don't. And I fall into the camp of people who don't really like it. I don't think that it's a particularly good game taken on its own merits, and I think that it's especially not great when compared with the Metroid series as a whole. You know, when you put it into that context, I think that really lessens it further. Not that I think that it's a terrible game or anything. It's okay. It's not awful. It's not particularly good though, in my opinion. But it does have some worthwhile stuff to offer. Some stuff that I would say is a good reason why you might be into the game if you care less about certain other aspects than I do. I mean, first off, it's got, really good visuals and atmosphere. This game looks very nice. It's very well done, competent pixel art, and the way that the environment visuals are crafted along with the music allows different areas to have varying atmospheres, all of which really kind of sell a certain sense of desolation, which is important in a Metroid game. You need that sense of desolation. It's very, it's very kind of central to the tone of the series, at least it used to be. The game also, just like, it plays really well, just on a moment-to-moment basis. The controls are good and well done, especially when you compare it with something like Super Metroid, which, I mentioned in that video that Super Metroid has some pretty fucking stiff-ass movement. It has some pretty okay-ish control scheme going on, but it's hard to go back to after playing either of the Game Boy Advance ones, Super Metroid or Zero Mission, both of which control pretty much identically to each other, and both of which control very well, in my opinion. So this game has a good control scheme that makes intuitive sense and is enjoyable to use, and it just feels good to pick up and play. I actually liked this game a lot when I first started it, because of the fact that it feels so good to just pick up and play. Like, the running around and shooting stuff just basically feels good and enjoyable and works. That said, there are a lot of problems that stop this game from really being something that I can enjoy today. First of all, it is very, very, very verbose. There's a lot of dialogue and exposition that you can't skip past it. It just won't let you. Especially really early in the game. It starts off with a, for Game Boy Advance standards, long-ass cutscene, which you can't skip in any way, that, exhaustively explains the plot setup, which feels pretty unnecessary to me in a lot of ways. I mean, a lot of this stuff could have been just kind of glossed over without having to make a big thing about it, and I'm saying that could have been done without having to lessen the story as a result. I mean, the only really relevant aspects are that Samus went to SR388 to try to exterminate to guard like a research. Wait, what exactly was the purpose there? Because I'm pretty sure she went with some soldiers. Right, it was that after she eradicated the Metroids in Metroid 2, another species that seemed to be dangerous started cropping up, so she and some soldiers went to check it out, at which point they encountered the X-parasites, which are a parasite that their natural predators were Metroids, but because Metroids were killed, they were allowed to kind of grow out of control. And Samus ended up getting infected and almost died, but eventually a Metroid-based vaccine was crafted, which allowed her to survive. But now she has Metroid DNA in her, which has some downsides, most notably the fact that she is now very susceptible to cold. But yeah, that's basically all you really need for the setup, is that after she killed all the Metroids, X-parasites started growing on SR388, she went to check it out, got infected, and now she's part Metroid. Sort of. So that's all you really need in the opening, but it takes a while to say this. And it has it has some extra bits of fluff that just aren't really necessary. And don't get me wrong, I appreciate additional details and that sort of thing in a story. I think that it's nice to have that, but that's not why I play Metroid. I don't play Metroid for extra fluff in a fucking text wall at the beginning of the game. I play Metroid to to fucking play Metroid. You know, it's a very gameplay centric franchise. It's very much a game that is about playing the game for the most, for most of the series. Again, more recent titles have kind of lessened that aspect. Even some of the good ones have. I mean, I think that Metroid Prime 3 Corruption is an excellent game, but I gotta fucking criticize it for the fact that it really does a lot to try to shove the story in your face, especially in comparison with earlier Metroid Prime titles, and extremely in comparison with earlier Metroid games as a whole. So, I'm not saying that, like, having this verbosity and this kind of fluff and whatnot is a bad thing overall, but in the context of the Metroid franchise, I would say yes, it is a step down. And even once you get past that early cutscene at the beginning, like, you're constantly being interrupted to have a ship computer like monologue at you about stuff all the fucking time in the game. Like, every so often you'll enter a navigation room where you can contact the ship's computer, and the doors will close and you cannot leave until you talk to the ship computer, which is fucking terrible. I hate it. It's fucking bad. Which leads me into my next point. This game is fucking obnoxiously handholdy. Each of these times that you go into a nav room and it locks you in until you talk to the computer then tells you where you need to go to get the next thing and puts a fucking map marker on your map, which is, I mean, do I really need to explain why that's not a good thing in a Metroid game? I mean, it's just, this should be obvious. It is not enjoyable to go into a game in a franchise which has thus far, at this point in time, this is like 2004 we're talking about here, which has thus far been characterized by exploration and freedom, and then be periodically stopped and forced to sit and listen while a fucking computer piece of shit monologues about where you need to go next and why you need to go there and why you should care. I mean, fuck you. The reason that I want to go there is because there's a thing there that I want to get, and the reason why I should care is because I enjoy getting things and playing the game. I don't need this fucking lengthy explanation of bullshit that I don't care about. But the weird thing is that even though parts of this game are obnoxiously, like, fucking telling you exactly where to go and what to do and just hand-holding the fuck out of you, other parts of this game are weirdly cryptic in comparison, even in comparison to other Metroid games. Like, this is one of the games that has the most bullshit moments out of the Metroid series that I'm aware of. Like, Super Metroid had a couple moments where the way forward was not really obvious because it wasn't telegraphed very well. The one that springs to mind is I want to say in Ridley. There's a bit where there's a wall that is it's a fake wall and you just gotta walk through it and there's literally no indication. That's not great. Zero Mission had a little bit of that sort of thing as well. There's a bit where there's like some fake lava that you gotta jump down into, and there is some indication that the lava's fake. You can see an enemy, like a flying enemy, flying back and forth in it, but you gotta be pretty like that's not something the average player is going to notice and care about, And again, that's not ideal. Ideally there should be I mean, even that isn't terrible. That is some indication. It's just not indication that a lot of people would notice and think of. But yeah, all Metroid games have like a little bit of this kind of cryptic bullshit where it's just like, oh, you gotta blow this thing up, but there's no indication. Oh, you gotta go here even though it doesn't look like you can go there. And ideally like the perfect Metroid game wouldn't have that kind of shit, but I think that it's like a worthy price to pay for the freedom that these games offer. I think that, I mean, that's really like my thesis with my little ramble there, is that I think that having these moments where, where something happens and you're like, well, how the fuck was I supposed to know that? What indication was there that I could go there, let alone that I should? I think that kind of exasperation is worth it for the overall freedom that these games allow. Metroid Fusion has more of those moments than any other Metroid game that I've played, and yet it is also one of the least free, most constricting Metroid games. It's got tons of moments where you gotta bomb a specific spot to get a fucking platform to raise, even though there's literally no indication and that specific spot looks exactly the same as every other spot on the floor. You gotta fucking shoot through this specific patch of ground when there is literally, it's literally the exact same tile as every other patch of ground, but you gotta know that this is the one that you gotta shoot through. It's fucking, it's like they were worried that the hand-holding was going to get obnoxious, and so they overcompensated by the few times that you do have to actually go out on your own and find your own way. They just made it fucking obnoxiously obtuse. And the result is that I mean, one, it's obviously terrible that there's more cryptic bullshit in this game than in the others, and it feels less earned than in the others. You know, in Super Metroid, like, yeah, it's annoying to get stuck on that thing, but the whole game is all about fucking being free and finding your own way around, so it feels earned, and again, it feels worth it. In Metroid Fusion, you've got these cryptic moments, but you don't have the freedom that they were a trade-off for in the other games. It's just switching between obnoxious hand-holding and obnoxious obtuse bullshit, and it makes both of them feel worse in comparison. It feels worse to be stuck in a cryptic moment when you're directly contrasting it to being obnoxiously handheld than it does when you're contrasting it to just being able to wander around and find your own way through. It gives the game this really conflicted sense to it. It feels like the design is kind of at war with itself, where the designers couldn't quite decide whether they wanted to be a more linear, more story-focused, more hand-holding game, or if they wanted to have more freedom to it and make it more obtuse and something that you gotta kind of puzzle your way around. It just, you know, it makes it feel like there are these two sides to the design that just they can't decide what they want to go with. It's not great. It's probably the worst thing about the game, honestly. The fact that you've got these two extremes that are just at war with each other, when, you know, the obvious solution would just be to find a place in between the two where you're not constantly being told where to go, and you're also not expected to just intuit that, oh, I've got to fucking bomb this patch of ground that is identical to every other patch of ground. Aside from that, it's also pretty poorly balanced, I think. Enemies do fucking shitloads of damage in this game. Like, they just do a lot of fucking damage per hit, and the health pickups that you can acquire heal you for a very little amount in comparison. Like, I just feel like the default difficulty level in this game, does it even have? I don't remember whether it has multiple difficulty levels, but regardless, I just feel like the way that the difficulty is balanced in this game, one, leans too far towards the making things harder than it needs to be end of the spectrum, and two, does so in a bad way. Like, it'd be one thing if just like the way that things were difficult was that enemies are have, like, you know, unpredictable patterns that you gotta kind of intuit your way around, and it's hard to, you know, and it's like a legitimate challenge that requires you to make more efficient use of your abilities and whatnot. But I don't feel like the enemies are significantly more difficult in terms of design than they are in other Metroid games, just that the difficulty has been inflated by the fact that enemies do fuckloads more damage now, which just is, I mean, you know, obviously, you know, why would I not hate that? That's a pretty terrible way to handle damage. It's just, oh, it's harder now because mistakes are punished big. You know, there's bigger punishment for mistakes, but it's not actually, like, once you learn the enemies, it's not actually any more difficult than any other Metroid game. It's just while you're learning, you're punished harder for fucking up, which it's just not great. I don't like it. The only real remaining point to get onto is the story of this game, which is what a lot of the problems have kind of centered around, is the fact that this game is trying harder to be more story-centric than other games, and it's trying to be a tightly scripted narrative experience or whatever. And you know, a lot of the problems that I have with the game are in service of this story. So is the story good enough to be worth that? Not really. It's not a bad story by any means. It's not like fucking Other M or some shit. It's a pretty good story. It's all right. I don't have any major problems with the story, but do I think that it's good enough to warrant ruining a lot of the rest of the game for? No, not even remotely. It's a functional story. It works. I get what it's going for. I appreciate some of it. I think that the SAX is handled pretty cool. You know, she's got this very legitimate air of intimidation, and it's also pretty neat how, like, the spoilers, the ship computer turns out to, like, have been based on Adam or whatever, so there's, like, that connection there. That's kind of cool. And I dig the idea of, like, the Federation are a bunch of fuckboys who were trying to fuck over Samus because they were doing some bad shit on that base. You know, that's cool. But I don't think that any of it is good enough to warrant fucking up the rest of the game in service of it. Plus, the story does have some major stumbles towards the end. I mean, first of all, at the end of the game, after you finally fight and beat the SAX, which incidentally is probably the worst fight in the game, but yeah, once you fight and beat the SAX, You then have to like you set up the destruct sequence on the ship, and you got to get back to Samus's ship and escape. And once you get back there, there's an Omega Metroid there, which is like the final boss. And incidentally, that's really cool. That callback to Metroid 2, I like that. But the thing is, you lose that fight. It's a supposed to lose thing, and then it does like a Super Metroid thing where you lose, and then the SAX comes in and saves you, and then like you absorb it, and it gives you the best gun. I'm trying to remember whether it was actually the Hyper Beam or not. I think it might have been the Plasma Beam. If it was the Hyper Beam, then I'm fucking mad. But yeah, it sacrifices itself and gives you your best gun, and then you kill the big bad boss and you go. The thing is, there was an actual reason why the baby Metroid in Super Metroid would want to sacrifice itself for you, because it fucking imprinted on you and when it was hatched, and thinks of you as basically its mother. And also Mother Brain, you know, was not exactly a friend to Metroids anyway. So, you know, it makes sense why the baby Metroid would come and save you at that moment, and that was actually, like, earned by how the story was set up and makes sense. There is no legitimate reason why the SAX would want to come and save you. I mean, you just set off the self-destruct sequence to destroy all of the X-Parasites on that ship. Why would it be helping you? You know, why would it not want you to just die with the rest of them? I mean, okay, you could maybe make a case for the fact that, like, Metroids are an X's natural enemies, and it, like, prioritizes it as a higher threat than you, but that still doesn't really make sense, because Metroids are like the apex predators of SR388, and they are the major predators of the X-Parasite. So, the X-Parasite's instincts should tell it to run from Metroids, not fight them. I mean, does a rabbit fucking turn around and fight a fox if it sees it? No, it fucking runs away. And if it sees that fox, you know, fighting a wolf, it's just gonna run away from both of them, because both of them are predators to it. And fucking Samus is a predator to the X-Parasites in this game. I mean, she fucking destroys the host bodies that they have inhabited, and then absorbs the parasites themselves and to heal herself. Like, there's fucking no reason why any X-Parasite should ever want to help Samus by the end of this game. It just doesn't make any fucking sense. It feels like they were just trying to have a big, cool boss moment like in Super Metroid without actually wanting to put in the effort to set it up in a way that makes sense and works from a narrative standpoint. Again, it feels unearned. That's like a consistent theme of this game, I think, is that it tries to do other things that other Metroid games have done, but it doesn't understand why they worked in those games, and so it just kind of throws them in spite of the fact that the rest of the game doesn't really fit them the way that these other games did, and it results in this weird conflicted design that just feels like there's a lot of shit thrown in that doesn't fit together and doesn't work and doesn't feel earned. There's also a big dumb monologue after the ending that Samus does, where she tries to sound all fucking profound about Adam or whatever, which I did not give a fuck about. At that point I was already kind of soured by the SAX moment, and then fucking Samus trying to take what was already a perfectly functional story and then tack on some additional profound meaning to it about the nature of humanity or whatever, just felt like fucking bullshit, and I didn't care, and I don't even fucking remember it. I just remember it feeling like it was bullshit at the time. That's how tacked on the shit was. It was just like, oh, here's some shit about the human spirit or whatever, I guess. Who gives a fuck? Metroid Fusion is not a terrible game by any means. I want to make that clear again. I've been very harsh on it in this video because I don't like it very much, but it's not a terrible game. It's worth playing if you're, you know, if it seems like your thing, and it does have some good aspects to it. The story is fine for the most part, but I really think that it is, I mean, I wouldn't say that it's overpraised as a whole, but I think that some people definitely overpraise it, because again, this is a very controversial entry in the series. Some people consider it to be one of the worst, some people consider it to be the best or one of the best. I think that both of these viewpoints are pretty fundamentally incorrect. I think that it is definitely somewhere in the middle, but I think that it's also definitely leaning towards being not great. On my Rosen meter here, I'm going to give it a 4 out of 10. Because, you know, there's some stuff in here that makes me think like, oh yeah, that's pretty cool, you could do some shit with that, but it doesn't, and then it fucking throws some other bullshit in my face that I don't like or care about, and I don't want it. I don't fucking want it. It's just not great in my opinion. Also, I just made quite a bit of noise with these fucking bottle caps here. I should probably just like remove all bottle caps from my recording area because I cannot seem to stop fucking messing with them while I'm recording, which is not good, obviously. But yeah, that's all I got.